businesses. Yeah. Who you work, Terry, Southern?
He's right down the street.
Yes.
No, Colleen
Johnny
is.
Hines. Another one. He's part of the
Colleen,
contact.
David is the chair, and Colleen is the vice chair.
Yeah,
And they're not, neither of them.
right.
So,
Johnny ain't never done this.
is Brad coming?
Well, he is. Well, he's supposed to be here though.
Frankie Division.
That's Johnny's ex-brother-in-law. See his truck's all
Yeah, that's how it's right down the street. It's that building on the other side of Bayham.
I like Paul.
We do a lot, we do some, we did a bunch of jobs with him. We help him out, and we have usually get sex from both of us.
Somebody would like to volunteer to chair this meeting tonight, or if we would like to have a vote, nomination of vote, either would work.
You might as
I
well
nominate
vote.
Lee.
I'm not sure how good I'll be at it.
That's okay. We can work through it together. And then I just have an announcement for anyone who has an item to be heard tonight. Under the rules of the Land Development Code, an approval of any project before this board requires 4 votes. As you can see, we only have 4 members tonight. So you can go forward if you'd like. It will require each member to vote affirmatively to approve your project. Or if you'd like, you can continue the item to January whenever we would have a full board. It's completely up to you. Okay? So I guess with that being said, Lee, if you want to.
So you've already called it to order?
Sure.
And I'm not the best one to do it because I don't have my stuff up in front of me yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here, Lee, you can take this agenda. That might be the
That would
best
help.
way.
They don't care if it costs us a month.
That would help. Okay, so the first item is the minutes from our last meeting. Anybody have any changes to those minutes?
I have just one change. Karen, with Colleen's absence, can we just put excused in parentheses each time it's mentioned? Okay. Oh, that's fine. Oh, gotcha. I guess if we could just do it at the top, that would be sufficient. And I would like to state on the record for tonight's meeting that her absence is excused as well.
And I did have one thing I noticed. There was some inconsistency. I think, Donna, were you at the last meeting?
Yes.
She was not listed as present, and then her vote was not listed under each item, if I'm remembering it and I was reading it correctly.
That may be because she wasn't in Granicus. I had Lewis add her.
Oh, okay.
I'll go back and make sure she's in each motion.
Okay.
Because it did say she made a motion or two, but there was no record of her votes, and she was listed as absent, or she wasn't listed as present at the beginning of
Gotcha.
the.
Okay. We'll
And
get
that's
that fixed.
Okay, so with those changes, we have a motion to approve the minutes.
I motion to approve. Second.
There's one other change.
Oh,
Sorry, I just noticed it, but it says Vice Chairman Bailey, and he's the chair under,
might be another Granicus issue.
It had him as vice.
Gotcha.
so you couldn't change it, okay, but it should say Chairman David Bailey.
Okay.
So,
Okay, with that change added, the motion and the second still stand? All those in favor of approval? Aye.
I did.
Lourdes. Minutes are approved. And then we have the 2017 DRB meeting schedule, which I also don't have in front of me.
It's the
Oh, here we
same
go.
Every first Thursday.
Okay. So any discussion, issues with dates? We have a motion to approve?
No,
Huh?
I'll make a motion to approve.
A second?
Second.
Donna seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Approved. Any announcements from staff? Anyone on the board? Okay.
Well, unless we want to do it here, because we only have 4 members, item number 2, would like to continue it to next month when we have more members present.
So
Is
should
that
we,
Fayard mini storage?
Yes.
You guys can go ahead
Go
and vote
ahead.
on that now if you'd like.
all right, so we've got a request to continue item number 2, Fayard Mini Storage Flagpole Deviation.
Okay, I motion to approve,
To continue.
to continue.
Second. Can I speak?
Yes, sir. You can come forward.
Can I address the board's attitude about additional flagpoles?
Sir, if you'd like the item continued, I think it might be best to do that when the full board's present.
I'm sorry?
It might be best to wait until the full board is present
Okay.
to discuss the matter. Okay, so I'm sorry, was it a motion to continue to the January
To the January
date?
date.
Okay.
Okay.
And Tom seconded.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we'll go back to item number 1, Forever Vacation Rentals building sign, if no further comments from staff.
Okay, good evening. Tim Brown with Planning and Development. This item was continued from our last meeting. It's a request for a building sign measuring 30 inches by 168 inches for a total of 35 square feet. It's located at 11714 Emerald Coast Parkway in Miramar Beach. The question at the last meeting was, is the sign consistent with the other signs in that plaza? The answer is no. They are red. You see the golf. There's another sign on the other side of that. There's 3 plazas there, 3 units, and then there's 2 above. So there's a total of 5, but there's only three signs on the building. So it meets our requirements in terms of size and everything, but it's not consistent with those other 2 building signs that are currently in the plaza. Now, the applicant is here this evening, but other than the color of the sign and maybe the type of letters, it does meet all of our other regulations.
Do you have a photograph or something that shows the
The whole-
sign with next to the other signs?
No, I'm
Partial
sorry.
on
We
the graphic.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
we went out there and
But
looked at it, but we didn't take any photographs.
It would be helpful to see the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I dropped the ball on that one. We should have took pictures while we were out there.
Are both the other signs the same as far as the same color? And
Yes.
the same size, and the letters are the same style?
Yes.
Okay.
And Tim, you just said, I don't know if you meant to say, except for the type of letters, it complies?
Yes, in terms of size and everything else, the only thing, the color and the type of letters, because it's not quite the same as the golf, the lettering. It meets all of our regulations. It's just not consistent with what's in the plaza. But in terms of height and size and illumination, it meets all of those requirements.
Are the other signs like the golf sign, which are individual letters and that they pop out?
Yes,
So they're exactly like the golf sign
yes.
next to it.
They look exactly the same.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
Are you saying that the letters on this forever sign are extended like the ones on the golf sign? Or are you saying that the golf one and the one next to it are alike?
The golf and the one next to it.
Okay, so
on the-
this one has no similarity as far as the lettering or the color or anything at all?
Right,
Okay.
that's right.
This is just my thought, is that it might be, if the forever sign had letters like that popped out and that were 3-dimensional like the others, it might be a little bit more acceptable, even though the color might be different, because at least the style, or if there's something that ties it together. This is the whole sign is seems so foreign to everything else. Design wise, it doesn't look good, and I don't think it has anything to do with the sign itself. It just has to do with what it's next to.
I agree.
May I speak about it?
Yeah. If we're done with questions for staff, the applicant
Yes, ma'am.
come forward.
I'm trying to pull it. I don't have really good service in here.
Oh, sorry, ma'am. Before you get started, could you state your name for the record?
Jelena Parmalee.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I'd like to say is that if we deviate from the sign and the font of the sign, if that's our only thing in dispute, I don't believe that the code states that it has to have the same font, because then we're deviating against from my logo.
No, I don't think that's in terms of my critique, it has nothing to do with having the same font. It's just that the three-dimensional quality of the letters would be, if it was more three-dimensional rather than such a flat sign.
It is three-dimensional, though. It's that per code, it has to be a three-dimensional sign, and it is. In fact, my quote, I went from a $1,200 bid to over $2,000 for this puny little sign. And it's not small, but to meet code and to meet the requirements of aluminum and whatever the requirements are, they have to be raised aluminum letters, which are more expensive. It is. I can't, and I'll be honest with you, as a small business, I can't afford the sign that my next door neighbor has that has golf balls all the way across it. Basically, we took the same sign that was there previously, which was a beach bum sign, and we're using that same type of size, and I think it's now to code as far as material. The sign previously was not to code. But there was a sign there previously, and it didn't match what was there before.
I think part of it is I mean, the letters might be three-dimensional, but it's the boxing that sort of like, that's in the box that flattens the letters when you look at the picture here. If you look at that photograph.
Oh, right, that's one of the ones.
Yeah. So I mean, if you look
But
at
that was just to outline it, because to do those golf ball numbers like such, it's much more expensive than to do this on one board. This is a lot less expensive. Also, when you do that sign, you're drilling multiple holes into the building. My landlord prefers this sign.
well,
It just looks so stark in comparison to everything else on there.
So could we get vote to approve if we did it all in red? Would that make it?
and do the same thing and all the boxing and everything.
That way it's cohesive with everybody else. I mean, I do feel like it still deviates from my logo and my coloring, but if that gets me approved, I've been working on this because it sat in the office for over 30 days. Nobody knew it was there, and luckily Derek saw it. So this has been going on for about 3 to 4 months now. But I have no problem changing it to red, even though beach isn't really red, but if that's what it takes to make it cohesive. But like I said, this sign here for a small business is over $2,000.
The reason they initially were asking for, what was it, the type of material?
It's better, actually. It's not. We're switching to aluminum.
Well, it escapes me, but it's not allowed by the code, even though we really need to amend the code because it's everyone uses it because it's cheap, it's durable.
What name is it?
But the code doesn't allow, so that's why they went with aluminum, because aluminum is an allowable material, where the other one, and God, I cannot remember it.
PVC?
Are you talking about the
It was
background?
PVC, wasn't it PVC?
No.
Guys, I'm sorry.
HDU?
No.
Sorry, guys. I don't mean to cut off the discussion. We just can't have multiple people talking at once.
How you gonna learn?
Sir, I'm
Sir.
sorry. We have to have
How
a
you
clear
gonna
record.
learn?
Sir, please lower your voice. It's not about not learning, it's that this is.
Yes, it is.
No,
Y'all
it's
know
not.
what y'all doing.
Sir,
I don't know
please.
anything about science. You're sitting here making
Stop
decisions
interrupting
on
me.
science,
Let me
and
speak.
you don't know anything about them.
Sir, her point was that we're recording this meeting, and you cannot hear when multiple people are talking at the same time. We can barely keep up ourselves when multiple people are talking over one another. So her point was that we don't need people all talking at once in the audience. If we want someone to speak, they need to come up to the podium and speak. Anyway.
I can text him. I can ask.
Well, it's not that big of a deal. I just wanted to point out, that's why it got so expensive, because they're going with aluminum letters. I just wanted
And the
to,
whole reason why I missed last month's meeting was to prolong the expense of it too, to be honest with you. At some point, it just gets too expensive to do a sign.
So these letters are extended out.
Yes, ma'am.
So
They're three-dimensional.
They're three-dimensional, and, pardon me?
3/8 inch.
3/8 inch, okay.
Yes.
And you're willing to change it to a color that would match the other signs?
Yes, which is that red kind of a color.
And what about the background of it, of the sign?
I don't know. I guess we could stay with the white.
Well, see, the white is the starkness.
Right,
I'm sorry.
that's
Yeah, I don't really like the
thing
white
is,
with the red.
I'm thinking about maybe making the color, the white matching the building color.
Okay, I could do that.
So it-
Right.
So it's sort of like
Right.
flows.
but it's the color of the building.
That would be a great solution.
Okay.
If you're willing to do that.
Yes,
If
I
you're
would
willing
be.
to do that, that would work.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Because
Then yours
is a raceway too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it sounds like we have something that's acceptable by the board, acceptable by the applicant.
Let me ask my husband. He walked in. Are you okay with that? Okay.
It won't make it any more.
Time out. He's the boss. I respect him.
That's good. That's
Thank
good.
you. We work together.
Right.
So does anyone here make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to approve the sign with the color change
Okay.
being red
Yes.
for all the letters and the border, and the background would match the color of the building.
Okay. Yep.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, thank you.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Appreciate your patience.
Thank you.
All right, item number 3, sport motoring building sign.
Yes, this is a request for a building sign measuring 36 inches by 177 inches for a total of 44.25 square feet. It's located at 323 Lynn Drive in Santa Rosa Beach. This sign is in compliance with the 98 Scenic Corridor regulations, and it's just down the street from our office here.
Okay, is the applicant present?
Yes.
Would you like to speak about anything?
I'm actually happy. Yes, is there any information that y'all like to know about it, or?
Do you all have any questions for staff before?
And sir, just so we're clear for the record, could you state your name, please?
Yes, Daniel Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to skip you all over. Anybody have questions for staff? We're ready for the applicant. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Lee. Thank you.
This is, as you see visually, this is a dimensional routed sign. Basically, it's 1-inch expanded PVC. It does have a 1-inch standoff from the building. It'll be mounted stud mounted. It'll also have basically the spacer and the mounting to the bracket there. Every letter is freestanding minus the lower portion there. It is all one piece. The lower portion is dimensional to match the upper text. Colors are coded there as well. This is all painted, so color matching there is correct, and it does match the color key.
Can you see the motoring? I mean, are you going to be able to
I
see
can't
that?
see it, yeah.
You can. The picture that's there, that's why I also did a rendering of the building. Basically, the shadowing of the picture, it does depict from the color palette that is the building. If you look at the building, it's actually a lighter to medium tan. The color gray, it's a darker gray. It does complement the building, and it does stand out. It's very visual. It's just the picture at the time of the morning, it casted a shadow on the building. The eave, as you can see, it makes it very dark.
Did we get a rendering? It looks
Yes.
like we just have a photo.
Yeah, we just
Did
have a
y'all see
photo.
rendering?
You should have, there's actually several. There's actually somewhat what could be like an engineered rendering.
I didn't see that.
I didn't see that either.
So that's probably what, we can't have no idea what the colors are.
Would you like to see it?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
The color is actually the match color of the building there.
Thank
So as
you.
you can see the.
Do you mind if we keep this copy?
No, absolutely not.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, you said the bottom part of the sign are the letters three-dimensional on that block?
Currently, the way that it's proposed, they are not dimensional. If you would like for them to be dimensional, I mean, my suggestion would be I probably wouldn't go any larger than an 1/8 inch of depth, just because, you know, basically the layering of the sign is consistent with what's above. But if you would like to see a little bit of depth, you know, I mean,
Doesn't the code require 3/8 minimum?
I think it does. So these are inset, routed in.
the
Is that what you were saying?
No, the copy currently that's on there, the complete automotive services, that is not. But you have basically the substrate. It's 1 inch thick as well. So you have a 1 inch standoff, and then you also have a 1 inch thick substrate. Then on top of the substrate, that's where you have the lettering.
And but the lettering itself is not, it's not three-dimensional?
On the lower portion, it's not.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So so you know you have the sport motoring. It's 1 inch thick and
Right.
it has the spacer. Same for the bottom. It's 1 inch thick and it has a spacer as well.
It's the block, the whole block is 1 inch.
Correct.
And then the letters on the complete automotive service letters are also spaced in front of the block or not?
Currently, they're not,
Okay,
but that meets the dimension to not do it.
okay. I mean, I think the difference between the top and the bottom makes sense, and if it's not three-dimensional on the bottom, it's okay because it's the box is three-dimensional.
Exactly, correct. And it stays uniform with the look. If you include dimension on there, then basically you have, not that layering's a bad thing, but currently the way that the sign would sit, if you see it from a side profile, it's all clean and uniform.
Right.
Whereas if you decide to add dimension to the lower text, creates another element.
I mean, to me,
Which-
it would make it busier.
Exactly.
I think part of our challenge here is I don't think we have all the information. We don't have the specs, unless you guys see them. So that's why we're asking all these questions.
It should have been submitted. I submitted them all.
They could have been, I just don't think they made it to us somehow.
It's not in the. There's no.
Is it
There's
the
no
review
section
checklist?
you're talking about drawings that show.
Yeah, he has it right here.
The sign-
There.
The sign specs.
It's not in it.
Like normally we have like how thick the letters are and all that.
Right.
It looks like it might be on this rendering, but it's that part.
I've got all of that.
Do you have it?
Yeah.
Where is
Does that
it?
mean that you got that?
I don't have
It's
that.
the last page of the sign graphic.
Yes, sign graphic,
Oh, and then continue.
sign graphic.
It must have been tagged onto something. What document was that?
Oh, here it is.
It's the last,
Oh, you can download, yeah.
PDF in that section.
I didn't scroll far enough, that's my problem.
The bottom letters along that are all the wording along the same board. What are those letters made out of?
Are you talking about the complete automotive service? Basically, the way that it's concepted right now is when the green is painted, there's a mask, and then it reveals basically the white below it.
Okay, okay, so it's the paint underneath,
Correct.
okay.
So
Yes, ma'am.
it's sort of like a box, and then the letters on top, and that is smooth.
Right.
Except that it's got
There's
the,
no dimensions to the letters.
right.
Correct.
So then that's my question for staff, does that comply with our code?
I think so, yes, because it sits out 1 inch from,
The
Actually,
board.
2
the
inches.
board.
2 inches from the wall. So if you look at the profile, if you look
Right.
from the side,
That's what I mean, the board
it's not
sticks out from the
flat
wall.
against the wall. So I think it is three-dimensional.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, aesthetically and from a design point of view, I think if they would stand out again, those letters, it would compete with the other letters above and it become a really busy sign.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't work.
I agree, and you also have basically the finish that's on sport motoring, it would be consistent with the finish below. It'd have a nice, clean, glossy finish, everything matches. If you add another element, you have, basically like she said, you basically,
It
You
becomes busy.
Exactly. I agree. That was actually in the design concept, in the initial thought of it, we were actually going to do that another half inch, but when you look at the side profile, it does become, you get a lot of jumble right there. Whereas as the way it sits right now, the side profile, it spaces and then you have the 1 inch.
I think it's a nice sign.
I think it's very nice, actually. I
Yeah.
think it'll complement the building well.
Okay. Now that I'm looking at all these specs, it's much easier. Sorry.
No worries. I tried to submit everything that would make it clear.
You did. I just didn't get to it. Any other questions? Anyone prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I motion to approve.
Second?
A motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, item number 4, community bank monument sign.
Yes, we had put a memo in your book to continue it, but they want to move forward. They were having difficulty. The initial sign they submitted was too big, and they had to go back to the bank and ask them if they wanted to apply for a deviation for the bigger sign or if they wanted to bring it into compliance. Well, we had to get it advertised and get it out, so we were requesting to continue it, but they don't want to do that. They want to go ahead and hear it tonight. They've brought the sign into compliance. It's an existing sign. It's an existing monument sign, and they just want to change the sign from Community Plaza to Community Bank, and they're going to paint the sign basically the same color as the building, because right now the sign is painted nothing like the plaza. It's a totally different color than what the plaza has. So it's up to the board. I mean, they want to move forward, so
Yeah, just to be sure, or just to be clear, it was advertised for tonight's meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
and they brought it into compliance. It is actually it's more in compliance in that the paint is more in line with the plaza than the current sign.
So do we need to do anything to hear it tonight, or?
No, you guys are, as long as it was advertised tonight, it's fine. I think the only issue is you didn't get to see the materials before the meeting. So it's up to you guys if you want to go forward.
Is everybody comfortable going forward?
I am.
I have no problem.
Me too. So we're fine. Okay, any other information for us?
No, unless you have any questions.
Any questions?
The applicant's here.
Do you have the artwork?
We
They have.
We have a packet.
we're provided it tonight.
My name is Vince Bucci with AP Signs. Our customer right now, the sign there that's painted that ugly green, is actually not in county specs. It's actually, I believe it's 28 square feet of signage, which to bring it into today's codes, we needed to crop it down to 17 square feet total of signage for that area. So ultimately what they want to do is put,
What he's talking about is the copy area can't exceed 35% of the sign. Currently, it's like 54%. Why? I don't know. But it's well in excess of the 35. So what they've done is they've brought it into, it's 34.9. So they've reduced the size of it to it's in compliance now, where currently it's not. It's bigger than what's allowed.
And that's what we're seeing by this drawing?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Currently, it says Community Plaza. They want it to say Community Bank. And they've reduced it down to 17 square feet, which is 34.9% of the overall sign.
So ultimately, what we're trying to do is bring it back in the code, but the customer also, because they're reverse lit channel letters, so obviously they want it to light. The sign that's there now is just, it's a stucco sign with just regular, like, 1/4-inch acrylic letters sat on it.
No
So-
illumination.
No, ma'am.
So these are the reverse lit channel.
Yes, ma'am.
It looks nice.
Any other questions from the board?
No.
Have a motion?
Make a motion, we approve.
Second?
The motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the last item on the agenda is a discussion of the board policy regarding building signs visible from US 98.
Yeah, I think Mark was probably more accurate last month when he said it's probably more of a practice than a policy, but it goes back a number of years. I don't know if it goes all the way back to 2005, but it has to be 2006, 2007 that not this board, but a previous board decided that if you could see it from 98, they would allow it on a case-by-case basis. It's not automatic. It's not in the code. The code just says you can have one. If you're on a corner lot, you can have one on each road. So you can have two. If it's the same business. You know, if you're on a corner lot and it's two different businesses, then you can only have the one. So I brought this up last month. I can think of two buildings off the top of my head where we've done that. They've got 3 signs on, north, east, and west. Where you can see it from 98, there's a sign. There's 2 buildings out there. It was approved by the Design Review Board, not necessarily this board, but by the Design Review Board. So it's a long-standing practice. And I know the board wanted to discuss it because it's not in the code. There's nothing specific to this in our code.
Thank you, Tim.
I missed last month's meeting. Sorry.
May I address the board?
Sir, you can. We can have public comment, but I'm going to go ahead and warn you to try to keep it civil if possible.
My name's Ron Culbreth. I'm with Built Right Signs out of Pensacola. It seems to me, as David, what's David's last name? Bailey pointed out, that these issues should be addressed on an individual basis. We have a 120,000 square foot building that has only one sign, 100 square foot, which is 0.009% of our facade. Where all we're asking is a second sign for 100 square foot. You have Mattress Place right across the street. You allow them to have 2 signs. That building isn't. What, Tim?
Mattress firm?
Mattress Firm. What's that? 20,000 square feet?
But they're on a corner lot, so they
Yeah, I understand that. I understand you got the side street thing, but it doesn't make sense that you don't use common sense and reasonable expectation. We got a $10 million investment here.
I was under the impression that, in fact, we did authorize 2 signs, the front
No,
sign
ma'am.
and then one up on the side.
No, ma'am.
And just didn't authorize the third one.
No,
Am
ma'am.
I wrong?
No,
No, ma'am.
it was a 3-2 vote. It
Right.
was in favor, but you have to have 4 votes, so
Right.
it failed. The board did address it, they voted, but because we
We've
didn't have
applied
4
for a
votes.
deviation and we'll be before you in January. I'm just asking, since you opened up the discussion for this, to consider that. Just a common sense and reasonable expectation. Somebody that builds a 120,000 square foot building, $10 million investment, should have more consideration. To have just a 100 square foot sign. That's all I'm asking.
discussion?
Tim, I was just wondering, do you have, the projects, is it really hard? I mean, you can't come up with it right now.
Well,
but
retail therapy is one,
retail therapy
and the other one was Copper Grill. It's not there
Copper
anymore,
Grill, yeah.
but that building has a sign on each.
YOLO, the
Mm,
mattress place next to YOLO.
well, no, Mattress
I
Firm.
know those are they have a side street.
Mattress Firm, you all voted it down. They wanted a west-facing sign, and I said the exact same thing. It's on a case-by-case basis up to the board, and the board voted it down. But those are the two that that have three signs, one on each facade.
3 signs, not
Three.
2, not just 2.
Yes, 3: east, west, and north.
And they both sit on a middle of the road lot.
Yes, no side
no
street.
No corner, no side street, no.
No.
Copper Grill's on a side street.
Is it?
It was.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Well, I just remember when we approved it, it was under this provision that if you can see it from 98, maybe that was the east-facing sign, because that's not a side street. Those are the only two I'm aware of. We've voted on others like Mattress Firm, but those two were approved. There's 3 signs on retail therapy. There's 3 signs on whatever. It's not Copper Grill now, but there's 3 signs on that building: east, west, and north.
Was the most recent?
Retail therapy was the most recent,
Well,
and
Fayard was.
and it had all. Well, I mean, that got approved, but it also had 3 previously. When retail therapy came in for approval, it already had 3 signs. So I think part of the reasoning was, well, there's 3 signs there now. We're not going to penalize them by only allowing 2. So
was the Fayard, was that a deviation or just an approval?
no, just an approval.
So it can still come back before the board, and did I understand is coming back before the board as a deviation?
Yes.
Voted for it to come back. Well, January.
That's their only alternative. Since it got turned down conventionally, then their only alternative is to come back and request a deviation.
Okay.
But my understanding is that the item that was on tonight's agenda was not requesting a deviation for the second sign. It was
Flagpoles. They want 3 flagpoles. The code allows 1. This is the first one I know of. We've had flag deviations before because people want their corporate flag. They have a corporate flag. Code doesn't allow for that. So I can think of.
We did one for
We did several over the years.
Watersound North. We added a flagpole on each corner, and I think there's maybe a third one somewhere in there.
Christian International Center has 15 flagpoles.
I wasn't.
We haven't approved that.
I wasn't aware of that.
Grandfather.
Yes, sir.
But no, it's not the sign. It's for the. But they are going to come back and ask for a deviation for the west-facing sign. So I think I don't want to put any words in anyone's mouth, but I think this discussion is determined whether you want to continue with this long-standing policy or just strictly adhere to the code.
And I guess, so in that case, somebody could get an additional sign. They would just have to apply for a deviation
Well, the reason
prior to the approval. Is that what we're saying?
Well,
You can ask for a deviation.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I wanted to know the history of it, because you say it's a long-standing policy, and, you've mentioned only 2 buildings that have done it. I mean, I'd like to see,
And possibly one.
yeah, and,
Copper Grill's on.
right, so I mean, I want to see the history of it, of how many buildings have we.
those are the
approved.
only 2 I'm aware of.
But I guess what I'm saying is there's still an avenue for people to obtain the additional sign, right, Matt? Through the deviation process.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
there is. I mean, the code specifies 1 sign per facade with a storefront. If you don't have a storefront on the side of the building, strictly reading the code, you don't get a sign on that side of the building. If you got a storefront on two sides of a building, you have a sign on each of those two sides where you have a storefront. The code does allow for deviations, certainly in the circumstance where you have a much larger building. It would be within the purview of the board to consider a deviation.
So
Yeah, I think the last-
basically, Tim, what I'm just saying is that maybe if we just follow the rules of the code, then, you know, if there's a situation like that, then we should just ask for a deviation and it come to the board and we can just acknowledge it that way. Instead of this long-standing policy that we don't know where it came from.
Well, that's my understanding of this discussion, is determine whether you want to continue with the policy or if you just want to scrap it and say, go by the code.
I think that's I mean, I don't know, but I think that would be the best way to do it.
Doesn't the code, and I think I said this last week, doesn't the code already address this long-standing policy?
No.
The code is either black or white, and this committee can deviate if an issue is not specifically addressed, or if somebody has a problem with that, which is the whole reason for the deviation process.
Yes,
correct?
they can apply, yes.
And whatever has happened before does not establish any precedent.
That's right.
Am I correct?
That's in the code. It's on a
Okay,
case
so
by
every
case.
deviation requests a brand new ballgame.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
so
correct.
I think, therefore I think it's clearer and cleaner if we just ask for deviation whenever you want to deviate from the code. And then we can acknowledge it and we can discuss it and
The
we
code
can
is
decide
the
otherwise.
code's going to be black and white. Let's deal with that black and white. And if it's something other than that, it then goes into the deviation process.
Well,
I don't have a problem.
correct me if I'm wrong. They just have to vote, right? Make a motion and vote that.
No.
We don't need a motion. That's already the way.
That's the way it
That's
should
the
be.
way it's set up now.
Yeah.
I think it's more of staff direction that if someone's requesting this, it needs to be.
A deviation.
They need to be directed to submit a deviation request and
Right.
want it to come before.
Okay.
And it's easy. I mean,
Okay. So what is the purpose of this board?
That's it. So
If it's black and white, then what is
no,
the
if
purpose?
it's not black and white, it is then becomes to the board as a deviation. And the board hears it as a deviation as opposed to staff saying, whoop, doesn't meet the code, go home.
Okay.
And even if. I
We're
mean,
the back door.
We have further purview, correct? Even if something meets the code, if it doesn't work in the
right,
board
what we
doesn't
just
feel-
did with the sign.
Yes.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, the sign met the code and it didn't meet stylistically or visibly. It didn't go with the rest of the building. So, and we worked it out.
We do that quite often,
Yep.
actually, where, and we did it on AR Mini Storage, actually, the building. It was a very good, healthy process of going back and
Yes,
forth.
and we recognize that. We're just having a real hard time with these two issues. When somebody comes in here and invests $10 million and builds a 120,000 square foot facility, do they not get some consideration?
Sir, actually, part of the intent of the code is to level the playing field for small and large businesses. You know, a large business with a lot of deep pockets could come in and just, if there were no code, and could completely sign a project to death, and it would overshadow all the surrounding small mom and pop businesses who can't afford to sign it like that. And so that's one of the good things about the code, is it levels the playing field. So, now, the next answer to your question, my opinion anyway, is that's what the deviation process is for. If there is a hardship because of a property, anything about a property, or if there's something unusual about the building or the property, then the deviation process can come into play. And that provides us with a logical format to assess those types of requests. If it's sort of loosey-goosey, like we were talking about before, how this has been handled in the past, it puts the board in a very difficult position.
There's nothing loosey-goosey about this. We got 0.009% of our facade.
Yeah, I didn't mean your project, the was
Yes.
anything loosey-goosey. I mean, in general, the process for all projects is what I meant.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, I think we've wrapped up that discussion. One quick announcement I was going to make. At the last board meeting, you guys asked that we go about the process to fix the plant list. That will be on the next BCC agenda, so I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. So it'll go to the BCC. If BCC okays it, it'll skip you guys because you've already given approval. Go to Planning Commission and the BCC 2 more times. So in about 2 to 3 months, we should have it fixed.
Well,
We've already seen it.
I finally dug it out of my Swiss cheese brain. What they wanted to use was acrylic. And I think whatever that process is, I think we should try to amend the code to allow that because it's inexpensive and it's durable. That's why all these people want to use it. I've turned several signs down because they were using acrylic letters, which is a very in the now material, but our code doesn't allow it because it hasn't been amended.
But they could apply for a deviation, couldn't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
But here's the thing, we just we were referenced earlier that we don't want to learn. We went through a very long, tedious process to change the landscaping portion of our code and the colors. Is that it? Was there a third?
Building materials.
Building materials, yeah.
Where we did this very thing. We allowed for some building materials that weren't in the use back when the code was put into place to become part of the code.
That's right.
And we have actually in the past few meetings had some discussions about opening it up and asking the BCC if we can have workshops to consider changes to signage. Was that it?
With the landscaping and the signage. And
The landscaping's gonna get handled. It was
Right.
We just did
Oh,
the
the
plants, yeah,
lighting.
lighting.
That was the other thing.
Okay.
And so I think that would be a wonderful thing. Now, the fact that it's inexpensive is great, but we also need to make sure it looks good. So that's why the board goes through a process. We would want to see that material, see what it looks like. If it looks good, then great, we'll consider adding it to the code.
And there's other materials that are similar to that
There
that might be
are,
added,
probably.
you know.
So
Yeah, I
let's-
mean,
so I'd like to
they keep
request
telling me
that
they
that-
hardly ever use PVC now, but that's one of the approved materials. I've had more than one person tell me, why is that even in your cup? No one uses PVC anymore.
Because everybody had CRC routers or whatever you call those things, and they were just throwing that 4x8 sheet of
So
PVC material
Yeah.
down and routing their own letters.
And you got to consider the code. This section of the code, I don't think, has been amended since 1998. This particular
time.
section.
Okay.
Well, it's time to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But instead of just turning them down until we go through that process, then you could just tell them to go through the deviation process.
I do tell them that. It's just, it's not worth it a lot of times for them to wait another month. It's a hassle. You got to do a pre-application meeting. You got to pay a $450 fee. I mean, they can do it, but most of the time they're like, you know what? We'll just do PVC or we'll do brass or we'll do whatever.
But Tim, when the deviation process takes longer, I mean, even if when they come to you the first time and they want to deviate from the material, then it's going to take one more meeting.
It depends on when they come in. If they've come in past the deadline for the next meeting, then they're looking at the next one. So say they come in, I'm just making up a date.
Right.
Say they come in November 15th. Well, the deadline was November 12th. So they can't come to December. The earliest they can come is in January. And then they'll want to wait a month and a half before they can put their sign up. So, I mean, some will. They're like, okay, we'll do it, no problem. But most of them are like, you know what, we'll just go with whatever we have to go with.
So I would love to see us hold the workshops and do like we did with the landscaping and bring some professionals in the industry in to talk with us about what's being used today, what may not be being used
That's a great idea.
anymore.
Yeah, I think it'd be great, yeah.
Any other parts of the,
So
signage?
workshops on signage and lighting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, those will be on the BCC agenda too. Oh, sure.
Sure, please come forward.
Just as a, is it me? Sorry. Just to add though, I know that, the workshops that you're talking about, things like that would be, highly beneficial, but, the fabrication of a channel letter, an illuminated sign internally lit, the material that's used for the face is actually, it's acrylic. It would be the same as a laser cut acrylic dimensional letter. It's actually, and it's thicker. You know, say for instance, the sign that was approved tonight, you know, I could have used laser cut acrylic. The cost is, you know, relatively, you know, the same to PVC. Whether you have the, you know, the machinery to make it, that's another story. But we do, but that's not a material, you know, that was, you know, approved. But it's the same material and actually a lower grade quality in the illuminated signs. So you have usually a 3/16 inch thick acrylic as the face. It's usually painted or it has vinyl. Whereas if you had, you know, say for instance, a 1 inch thick laser cut acrylic, you know, it's an inch thick, doesn't fade. The paint is as good as, you know, how it lasts. So just something to think about if it is an approved material. It actually, as Tim said, it's very common.
So is it approved or is it not? I don't know. What, I mean,
Well, it's kind of in between in that case, because the code says channel letters and reverse channel letters are allowed. It doesn't speak to what they're made of. It just says they're allowed. But then it goes on to say brass, PVC, stainless steel. So if you tell me these letters are acrylic, I've got to say, well, that's not allowed by the code. But if you tell me it's a channel letter or a reverse channel letter, then I'm okay with it. It's like
It's an aluminum and acrylic together.
you're good to go.
Yeah.
Because the code says they're
we need to
allowed.
clarify that.
So we're gonna have workshops on signage
Yeah.
and lighting.
definitely needs to be.
It depends on how
And
somebody,
verbiage.
Yes.
how they verbalize it.
Because you just have
When they
multiple
present it.
materials to make one thing.
Right,
You know?
right.
Whereas, you know, you could,
composite materials.
exactly. So it's just something to say.
It's
Thank
all
you.
about the look, so.
Oh, yeah.
We need to update.
I'd like to make a motion
What?
that we adjourn if
Oh,
we're
yes.
discussing.
He's done.
Thank you.
Well, and
Anything else, Tim?
he left, but I say this almost every meeting. He brought up about the board's role. The code does give this board a lot of discretion when it comes to aesthetics. I mean,
Yep.
that's the way it is. It talks about you have to have whatever pitch and color, but still, the code gives this board a lot of discretion when it comes to aesthetics, and whether they like it or not, that's the way it is.
Well, it was voted last time, 3-2, and it was a decision that was made by the board, so,
Yeah, I mean,
a case-by-case basis.
He
It's not
got
just
his decision. It wasn't a decision he liked, but he got his decision.
Right.
We won't go too much into it since
Yeah.
we'll see it in January.
Okay, so we've already had a motion to adjourn.
I second
Do I
that.
sign this?
Second,
Well, we're gonna, no, it doesn't have to be, but we're gonna make changes to it, right, to the meeting minutes? So,
That's right.
yeah, so David can sign them later.
Okay, thank you all. We're adjourned, I believe. Do we need a second to the motion to adjourn?
second,
Second?
second, and
All in
I.
favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did she have orders to sign? Did they have orders to sign?
Thank you, Lee.
We did.
We don't remember this. You're good. Within an hour of you arriving, you're
You do need to sign the orders though, if that's okay.
Is this in?
I think so. Bye. See you later.
Oh, wow.
Do you have a
I don't know
pen?
why it did when I walked back over there.